Hey everybody, Jeff Schneider here. So the holidays are just around the corner, which means it's time to dust off those Christmas songs. Now, if this year you want to inject some more advanced harmony into those Christmas songs, you gotta check out Diminished passing chords. It sounds kind of complicated, and it is, but today I'm gonna make it real easy for you to understand so you can play them in any song you want. The first thing you have to understand is, what is a passing chord? A passing chord it's kind of like a bridge chord. It gets you from one place to another. So if we have a basic chord progression like C major going to A minor 7, well, what can you put in between those two chords to bridge from one to the next? That's what a passing chord is. And a diminished chord, I think the simplest way to describe that is a chord made up of minor thirds. So you have B, up a minor third from B is D, up a minor third from D is F, and then up a minor third from F is A flat. A minor third, of course, is also 3 half steps. 1, 2, 3. Now you also have to understand inversions. So if you take that same voicing, you can play it in this position, or you can play it here, or here, or here. It's all the same notes, just a different order, a different arrangement of those notes. You also have to understand the difference between closed voicings and open voicings. So when I play this right here, it's a closed voicing. It's all compressed. All of the notes are right next to one another. But what I can do is either a pop or a drop. Here's what I mean. We're gonna take one of these inner voices, let's take the D, and we'll drop it down an octave. Now I've opened up the voicing. It's less clustered. Let's do a pop. I'll take the D again. Let's go up the octave now. Same notes, I've just opened it up. I'm spreading it across the keys more. That's gonna help you get a more balanced voicing, and it's also going to help when you have a voicing down low and it sounds kind of muddy and you want to open it up and you get a better, cleaner sound like that. So we have inversions, we have closed and open voicings. You also have to understand extensions. So the main chord, the core chord, is made up of the basic chord tones, 1, 3, 5, and 7. But you can also add extensions to this chord. And the extensions that work are any note that's a whole step above any of the main notes. Again, that's any note that's a whole step above any of these notes here. So for instance, we have a B. What's a whole step above B is this C sharp. Now, if that sounds too crunchy to you, you can always pop it up. Take that note, pop it up the octave, and there you have it. Let's add another extension. Let's keep this voicing here and take one of the other main chord tones. Let's do the D. What's a whole step above D is E. Add the E in there. Again, a little too much of a cluster there, so let's take the E, put it on top now, and we have that voicing, which is really cool. A lot of tension in there, but the whole point is that we have these passing chords that are packed with tension so that they then release into the target chord that follows. Now, one other thing I sometimes do is actually leave out one of the main chord tones. So for example, if I have this B diminished 7 chord, from time to time, I'll leave out like the third and just have these 3 notes. Now, I don't always do this, but I find that you still get the effect of the passing chord even if you don't have all the main chord tones. Sometimes you need to leave out a note in order to get that more balanced voicing. Now don't worry, you're gonna see how everything I just talked about applies to a real playing situation, but first we have to answer one important question. How do you know what diminished chord to play for that passing chord? So let's take the chord progression I mentioned earlier, C major 7, going to A minor 7. Well, how do you know what chord fits in between there? Well, the easiest way to figure it out is just go a half step below the chord you're going to, a half step below the target chord, if you will. So if we're targeting A minor, we're going to an A minor 7. What's a half step below A? It's G sharp. So we're gonna play a G sharp diminished 7 chord. It might not look like this, which is a closed position, root position, G sharp diminished 7 chord, but it's gonna be some iteration of that chord. So just remember that passing chord is gonna be a half step below your target chord. Now, even if you know your passing chord is gonna be G sharp diminished 7, how do you know how to voice that chord? Well, a few different factors come into play, and we're gonna go over all of them as we apply this chord within Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. So the first thing to keep in mind is, what is the melody? The melody does not change. You have to respect the melody. So let's just play that real quick. We're gonna start with this opening phrase. Okay, C major, A minor 7, D minor 7, F over G, G7. And then we're back to C major. Okay, we're gonna just start with that phrase. So again, the question is, what do we put between the C major and the A minor? Well, first of all, what's the target chord? What chord are we going to? We're going to A minor, so a half step below A is G sharp. It's gonna be some kind of G sharp diminished 7. We also have to respect the melody. What's the melody note? It's E. So we have an E in the melody and maybe a G sharp in the bass. So you can start with the outer voices. But the thing is, it doesn't have to be a G sharp in the bass because remember, you can use inversions. So this is where you get to make creative decisions as to what you want your bass line to sound like. So for instance, we can have this. I'll just play the outer voices. That's okay. But what about this? What if instead of playing the G sharp in the bass, what if I play the third of G sharp diminished 7, which is B? Then we have this. Now that's kind of nice for a couple of reasons. First of all, we have this smooth bass line as opposed to one that's a bit jumpier. That still sounds good, but this is smoother. So that's kind of nice. We also have this contrary motion between the bass and the melody, where you have the melody going up and the bass going down. That contrary motion is musically pleasing. So let's go with that. So now that we have the outer voices established, the next step is to build up this voicing. So let's play our outer voices. We've got B and E, and the chord is some kind of G sharp diminished 7. So I'm gonna play the rest of the notes down in the bottom here, building it up from my bass note. It's a G sharp diminished 7 in first inversion. Here's root position, and we're doing it in first inversion. So you could play it like this. This is the full closed position chord down here, and there's my melody note on top. But the thing is, this is not what I would call a balanced voicing. We have all of this crunchy clusteredness down below, and then this melody note is all by itself on top. So I want to balance this out a little bit, and there are a few ways of doing that. Remember, we talked about the pop and drop, where you take an inner voice and you move it up or down an octave. We talked about adding extensions. There's several ways of doing this. I'm going to simply take out one of the notes. So instead of playing all of those down there and the E on top, I'm going to take out the D. I'm going to take that out completely and just play this. That sounds a lot more balanced. It's got less of that crunch in the bottom register, and I think it'll still have that passing chord effect. Here it is with the C major chord up front and then the A minor 7 chord on the other side. You know, another reason why leaving out that note is not such a big deal is because the passing chord goes by so quickly. So we're on A minor 7 now, and let's keep going. So the next part of the melody goes like this. So we're targeting D minor. That's our next destination. We have an A minor, the melody goes up to C, and then we're on a D minor 7 chord. So the question is, how do we get to that D minor? Well, what's a half step below D? Same process as before. D, C sharp as a half step below. So it's gonna be some kind of a C sharp diminished 7 chord. Let's build it out real quick, just a basic closed position voicing. Again, these are all minor thirds. So it's C sharp diminished 7. Now we have to figure out what are the outer voices. So remember, we have the melody set in stone, we have that C on top, and then we could play C sharp in the bottom. We could play any of those chord tones in the bottom. E, G, B flat. It depends what inversion you want to use, but let's just start with the basic one. Let's start with C sharp. That could work. Let's play it in context. I'm going to start from the A minor. So we have, that could work, but we have so much distance here. I'm going to just immediately invert this up and start with this voicing here and build out from there. So we have the E in the bass. So this is a C sharp diminished 7 in first inversion with the third in the bass. That's root position. That's first inversion. But this is still not a balanced voicing. We still have a good amount of space between the C sharp and the C up there. Now, by the way, let's point out that that C there is not part of the chord, or one of the main chord tones, I should say. And I didn't even point this out earlier. When we had that G sharp diminished 7 chord with the B in the bass, the E in the melody is not one of those main chord tones. It's one of the extensions. D is a main chord tone, but we're going a whole step above that D, which gives us E. So that's why those extensions are really helpful, because sometimes the melody note is going to be one of the extensions, as it is here and as it is here. So now we're back to this C sharp diminished 7, but we have it in first inversion. So we have an E in the bottom, C is on top because that's the melody. The melody is set in stone, but again, we need to balance this voicing. How are we gonna do that? I'm gonna do a pop. I'm gonna take this G and I'm gonna pop it up an octave to this G here. And already that sounds a lot better, much more balanced. Let's do it in context. I'll play it from the A minor. Okay, not bad. There's one thing I don't like about this, and that is that the G that I put into that voicing there, I'm hearing too much of that G, as in we played it in the A minor voicing, there it is in the C sharp diminished 7 voicing, and it's also in the D minor 11 voicing. So it's just too much G. So what I'm gonna do instead is this. I'm gonna go from here to here. Now that's crunchier, but again, it's a passing chord. We want it to be crunchy. We want that tension and release. And why does this note work? Well, because it's one of the extensions. Instead of this E right here, which we already have down here, I'm gonna go a whole step above, and that's gonna give us F sharp. So I'm leaving out the G, and instead I'm playing F sharp. In this case, we have two extensions. The F sharp and the C are both extensions of the C sharp diminished 7 chord. So now we have this part, this D minor chord with this descending scale in the melody. And that's going to be a great opportunity to insert a passing chord to spice up that static D minor sound. So instead of this, which is just D minor over and over again, we're going to do this. I'll play it first and then I'll explain what I'm doing. All right, so what was that? Well, what I'm doing here is I'm using the diminished passing chord that supports D minor. So again, what's a half step below D? C sharp. So we're gonna go back and forth between the D minor and the C sharp diminished 7. Actually, we're gonna start with the C sharp diminished 7 because in the melody, we have a G, which works great for C sharp diminished 7. Here's C sharp diminished 7. We've got the G in there. Let's invert it so that the G is on top. But it's closed position. Let's make it a little more sophisticated by opening this up. We'll do a drop, take that E, the second to highest note, drop it down here. So we have a C sharp diminished 7 in this nice open position, and that's gonna resolve to a D minor 7 chord. Now, if you wanna practice this without the open position voicings, which is actually a great step to take, that's gonna sound like this. C sharp diminished 7, D minor 7. Then we have E in the melody, so we're gonna go back to C sharp diminished 7, and then D in the melody, D minor 7. So we're alternating between C sharp diminished 7 and D minor 7. When you open it up, you get this. Take the second to highest note, which is E, drop it down. We're gonna do the same thing with this voicing. Second to highest note, drop down. Second to highest note, drop it down. And then second to highest note, drop it down. All together, it sounds like this. This kind of back and forth between your target chord and your diminished passing chord sounds great, especially on these scalar patterns in the melody. Here it is all together. Okay, a couple more chords. The next one that we need to approach is some kind of a G7 or a G sus. So what's a half step below G? F sharp. All right, let's just play the outer voices. So we're coming from here. So we're right here, and then we need to play something like that. Remember, the melody goes like this. So now we're harmonizing that C and that D, the last two notes. The very last chord is going to be G with that D up there, and the passing chord that approaches that G is going to be some kind of F sharp diminished chord, which gives us these outer voices. So let's fill it out. Let's do F sharp diminished 7. Now that sounds pretty muddy Again, it's this closed position. You. You. Which gives us these outer voices. So let's fill out the chords. We have an F sharp diminished 7 chord. That sounds pretty muddy down there. And we don't need the C down here because we have the C in the melody already. So let's take the C out here. Still sounds kind of muddy. So let's take the A and pop it up. That sounds better. But I want to try something here. Instead of playing A, let's bring it down a half step, which is kind of a unique sound. I like this. It's almost like A flat major over G flat. And the reason I played A flat there is because it works as an extension above the F sharp. So we can call it a G sharp actually. So it's kind of like a G sharp major chord over F sharp. But the point is here is that I'm just experimenting. I had this chord, which is the proper chord, I suppose. It's the F sharp diminished 7 chord, but I'm taking this note and I'm subbing in G sharp since it's one of the extensions that ends up sounding pretty cool here. And what I'll do is actually resolve that up to the A, and you'll hear what this sounds like in context. So you hear that, it's almost like a grace note or a suspension that resolves up. And then that's gonna go to a G major with the D in the melody. And what I'll do here is just embellish a little bit more. I'll do G sus and then resolve to regular G. And what that will do is actually give us this nice counter melody within the voicing. This line right here. That should sound nice underneath the melody C to D. Check this out again. Here's the whole thing. If you want to learn more about how to inject these diminished chords into your playing in all different kinds of ways, you got to check out my course. It's called Diminished Chords Decoded, and you can get it for free as a bonus course as part of my Chord Theory for R&B Piano package, which also includes bassline builders and scale mastery. So check that out. It's linked somewhere on the screen and in the description below, but we'll leave it there for now. I've got another great video for you right here, so check that out, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.